Great news, folks. Britain is now in the grip of arguably the worst financial crisis since the Second World War. But how did it happen? The war debt that we accumulated was because German bombs rained over London and other great British cities. Hitler, history's worst monster, was rampaging across Europe, with his territorial ambitions being the United Kingdom next. Fascism threatened our very existence and that of the free world. A pretty solid justification for expanding the national debt, I'm sure you'll agree. So what happened this time round? A few bad flu seasons with a coronavirus not dissimilar to previous respiratory illnesses, the average death toll from which was over 80, which is actually above the age of life expectancy in this country. A nasty virus for sure, and a tragedy for those who we lost. But a bug non-fatal to almost everyone, and yet we shut down the economy for 2 years. We closed schools, we covered people's faces and borrowed £500 billion. £500 billion. Let that sink in. Here's what it looks like written down. Just look at that number. I've never seen a number like that before. You'll just never get your head around what a colossal figure that is. And wouldn't that money come in handy right now to help people with their energy bills? And to give you a flavour of the sheer madness of it all, and all of it was mad, including paying healthy people to stay at home and closing thousands of once viable businesses, we had the test and trace system, which the cervix-free leader of the opposition, Keir Starmer, was begging for months. It cost £34 billion and it didn't work, because when cases reach a certain level, you can no longer track or contain and isolate a disease like this. No sugar Sherlock. Our disastrously arrogant, under-evaluated, ill-conceived, non-evidence-based attempt to stop a respiratory virus, something never previously attempted in human history, could be forgiven if they had done it for a few weeks. But they did it for 2.5 years. And here we are. Yes, countries around the world also had lockdowns, which has created supply chain issues and therefore inflation. And old Vladimir has not helped with his invasion of Ukraine, which has spiked the cost of grains, cooking oils and energy. But the real smoking gun can be found in Whitehall and the crime of printing hundreds of billions of pounds worth of empty money. I know the world's gone mad and men are women and women are men these days, but even economists have become separated from reality. Thick as pig shit professors and economic so-called experts told me on this programme and on my radio show prior to that this borrowing was cost neutral. They said interest rates were so low it almost paid us to borrow money. The experts, they said the real challenge was to get on top of this virus, and now they're eating their words. Although, be clear, there will be no words of contrition or apology from them. They are unashamed. And now we're faced with so many problems. Unemployment, which has been mercifully low, is now set to jump by over 1 million. That's right, 1 million wrecked lives. Two-digit inflation may be with us for another 12 months. And we're predicted to be in a recession not for a few weeks or a few months, but 1.25 years. The illiberal and frankly communist-style experiment of lockdowns has created the first man-made recession in history, probably in response to a man-made virus. Who knows? A year ago, that sentence would have got you cancelled. Now people seem to silently nod in agreement. 100 brave Tory MPs were the only voices of dissent in the course of this pandemic. Heroes like Steve Baker and Mark Harper, who risked their careers to say this is madness. They should be the ones in competition for the keys to number 10, not Sunak or Truss. Those two sat idly by and nodded this madness through, led by the allegedly freedom-loving Boris Johnson, as they all sat smugly around the cabinet table. That's when they weren't having parties. The British people have had a crime visited upon them and are now waking up to the consequences. We've been attacked, we've been imprisoned, and we've been burgled by a state that has forgotten it's there to serve us. And British children that haven't even been born yet will be landed with the bill. And we could do with some of that $500 billion right now to tackle the cost of living crisis, which is, of course, the cost of lockdown crisis. Let's take another look at how much we borrowed. That's a lot of numbers on there, isn't it? That's a figure so big it will get Carol Vorderman excited. Well, we're now on a countdown to catastrophe. I know it's the other girl now, but it works better with Vorderman. You'll find my record of opposition to this goes back all the way to March 2020. It's all there on Twitter. Take a look. But it's about where we go from here as we face what will be a hellish economic storm that really matters. We must pray for a negotiated peace between Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky. We must tackle the monster of inflation, the stealth tax that hurts us all. We must chop down the magic money tree and get back to living within our means and paying down our debt and stimulating economic output. The ultimate goal must be a low-tax, productive economy that seizes the freedom that Brexit has to offer. We need a lean, mean economy where you can make something of your life and where it pays to work. And we must learn from the seismic mistake of COVID measures, all of which, masks, plastic screens, bubbles, lockdowns, distancing, will be laughed at by future generations. What the hell were they thinking? Is what they'll cry. Of course, you'll hear about new variants and new viruses, with Big Pharma offering the answer. I couldn't care less if next time round it's the bubonic bloody plague. You give the public the information they need and let them act accordingly. You don't close schools, shut down businesses, mandate medication, borrow billions, or stop people from seeing, caring for, or even burying their loved ones. There will be siren calls for more COVID measures in the winter months as cases increase. I can't think many people will take those seriously now. I, personally, will not wear one of those filthy, worthless masks ever again. As the commentator James Melville points out this week, there are now 3 billion of those masks in the sea. Absolutely shocking. Look at the state of that. And we actually got through 129 billion, all of which were thrown away. 3 billion, that's a big number. Come on, Greg, let's have a look at how it appears on the screen. 3 billion masks. Non-biodegradable, killing wildlife, entering fish, and therefore, ultimately, the food chain. We used to wear the masks. Next, we'll be eating them. Nice. And how much did we borrow again, Greg? Let's have a look at this. $500 billion. I've never seen a number that big. I might get a tattoo of that on my forearm. The suggestion of more economically damaging COVID restrictions will be a sick joke to those shivering in their homes this autumn and winter, wearing 2 coats because they can't afford to switch the heater on, deciding just how many times they can afford to put the kettle on that day. In March 2020, a generation of politicians, so-called scientific experts, woke virtue-signalling medics and bullying broadcasters and journalists took us by the hand and led us into hell. Amazingly, they're still on telly and still on the radio, complaining about a crisis they created. They shouldn't be on the telly or on the radio. They should be in hiding. Never forgive and never forget. As we brace ourselves for a year of economic hell, which will impact our health, our lives, our livelihoods, and our future, it's the biggest I told you so in history. Never again.